Welcome viewers, Dr. JWAU bringing this series to a close, starring Anika Wells, Extravaganza Failure. Episode 5's the moral obligation to resign when technical survival is not enough. And this is a behavioural political analysis based on Anika Wells' scandal. The final episode's no longer merely about Anika Wells alone. It's about what happens when technical survival remains possible, but moral legitimacy has already been seriously eroded. A political system begins dying when guilt no longer produces repentance, only strategy. And the deeper scandal is not only travel breaches, the deeper scandal is willful blindness. The failure to feel the sacred weight of public money before exposure, audit, repayment, and penalty-forced coercion and correction. The factual record remains established, approximately 250 claims reviewed, 4 breaches identified, total of $10,116.11 repaid, including penalty, which is a spit in the ocean for somebody like Anika Wells. She is, out of sufferance, issued an apology, and her technical survival was maintained, but not her public approval. Legally, defenders argue the audit functioned, the repayment was processed, the breach was corrected, and the file should close. But that defence now becomes part of the public outrage. Yes, public money was wrongfully handled, but the system corrected it after exposure. Therefore, political leadership should continue unchanged, which is alarming. And that is where moral confrontation intensifies. A political representative entrusted with taxpayer money should not need exposure to rediscover restraint. The public, the Australian public, no longer sees a political minister, one repayment, one apology out of sufferance, and another closed political scandal file. It sees a political community collectively negotiating down guilt. Colleagues remain measured. Allies soften outrage. Institutions contain the scandal. Language lowers intensity. And the system protects continuity. And this is where cognitive dissonance within the political arena becomes cultural. The political class publicly speaks of service, fairness, integrity, sacrifice, and responsibility, while internally adapting around privilege, convenience, entitlement, and consequential management. And temptation's no longer feared. It's simply just politically managed in front of the Australian public audience. And guilt is no longer confronted. it is diluted through language, procedure, collective silence, and staged remorse, usually out of sufferance. For the politician, privilege becomes normal, waste becomes survival, exposure becomes containable, and shame becomes temporary public relations weather rather than inward moral collapse. That's the spiritual darkness underneath political entitlement. Australia already carries a political benchmark for this moral question. Barry O'Farrell resigned over a bottle of wine because political legitimacy once feared moral compromise more than loss of office. And that comparison now hangs over modern Australian politics like an accusation. Not because every scandal is identical legally, not because every breach carries identical financial scale, but because the older political instinct understood something modern systems increasingly appear willing to negotiate away. What these politicians have forgotten is public trust is fragile enough that leadership sometimes must step down once moral credibility materially fractures. That's why the public reaction surrounding Anika Wells deepens psychologically. Australians have been asking, has the moral threshold, and let me say the moral political threshold, collapsed? Has technical survival in politics replaced honour? Has political culture become more committed to continuity than accountability? And does modern political leadership now fear losing power more than losing moral legitimacy? And this is why, for Anika Wells, resignation becomes necessary. Not because resignation is legally compelled, not because repayment did not occur, not because every allegation equals criminal corruption, but because public offence is not sustained by technical compliance alone. It requires judgment before exposure. It requires restraint before audit. It requires shame before penalty. It requires sensitivity before public anger. And most of all, it requires service before self-protection. Viewers, the issue is no longer whether Anika Wells can technically survive the process of this scandal. The issue is whether her conduct has already morally constituted in front of the Australian public who she's supposed to serve the case for resignation. A political representative entrusted with public money cannot hide behind later correction when the original failure reveals willful blindness towards restraint, proportion, and most of all, taxpayer trust. Viewers, repayment repairs the ledger. It does not repair judgment. It does not restore restraint. And it does not erase the example set before the nation. By moral obligation, Anika Wells should resign. Not as a theoretical punishment, not as personal hatred, and not as partisan vengeance, but as a necessary public example that office is higher, political office is higher than self-preservation. Taxpayer trust is higher than political comfort, and moral responsibility is higher than technical survival. My closing statement, viewers, is public office survives only while the Australian public, believes its political leadership fears moral corruption more than loss of political power and profit. And once that fear dies, the public stops merely criticising individuals. It begins rejecting the legitimacy of the Australian political culture, protecting them altogether. I'm Dr. J.W. Ayub. Thanks for joining me in this series. Like, subscribe, press the bell, comment, and share this video with somebody else. Bye for now.